they pay, one for their bank and one for the IRS. I suspect that's true. Now, the reason I say that is, even my publisher, being very frank about it, I had reports of people in Germany and all, in Brazil, and all who were reading this book when I was not publishing it.
And you weren't thinking in terms of that?
Oh, they were reading the book, but I was getting no return on the money. I was not getting the money. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, of course.
There were military bases, for example, in Europe where the book was a big seller, and I was hearing from them, but I was not getting. Right. I was not. My returns did not show
didn't
that.
reflect that.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Same thing in the record industry.
Of course.
How do you prove that in the court of law, though?
Well, that probably is a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But it's very helpful. Character does matter, and in fact, in the column, in the column I just did that I mentioned a minute ago about the Million Women's March and so forth, character and integrity ultimately not only matter, they're not only relevant, they can be decisive. And so it's helpful if you can find the person who has the character with whom you can deal. But at the same time, and here someone has recently said, you know, quoting Ronald Reagan, and not everything some folks say, even though they say something's bad, not all of it's bad. He says, trust but verify. And I like that. I think that's true. Say, okay, all right, I trust you, but give me the proof.
So what'd you do?
In the case of, well, for one thing, I got the rights to publish it myself. Okay. So, you know, I am...
Oh, but you already had that in the contract in the beginning.
Oh, it was in the contract, but what one tries to do, in this case, I had a good agent, but at the same time, I had to work with the agent to say, here are some things I want. There's no substitute for being informed yourself.
Yeah.
And there are some things I wanted in the contract, got them in the contract, and when that became relevant, it became operative. Although the publisher at that time did not want to obey the contract, and I did, you know, have to say, here's my lawyer, and here's what we're going to do. But
did you actually do it, or you had to threaten to do it?
Well, I did what I just said. I said, now, you know, here's the name of my lawyer, and if we have to do it this way, then that's the way, and it'll cost us both, but I am going to do what I must do. And at that point, they say, oh, you know, he's crazy, go ahead and let him.
So that's what you did?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So then I got my right, you know. But you know, you always have trust but verify.
Sad you had to do that.
And be prepared to fight. When I was at Tuskegee, I was director of information at Tuskegee for a couple of years. In fact, my older son was born there. They had a president, Dr. Foster, who was president at Tuskegee, Dr. Luther H. Foster, Jr. And he used to have an expression that I think is relevant here. He used to say, fight no skirmishes, wars only. and the point is, you risk as much in a skirmish as you do in a war.
So what? Hey, just fight the war.
But you don't have a chance to win as much in a skirmish. So his idea was, don't fight skirmishes. But if it's a war, fight it. But it must be a war. It must come up to the standards of a war, not a skirmish.
Before you
don't waste your resources on skirmishes. But if it's a war, and for me that was a war, as it was with my being fired from Newsweek. There was a First Amendment issue in there which the public has not really yet fully understood.
What is the advantage of, now that your rights are reverted back to you, what is the advantage of, you know, doing it yourself and having your own company?
Well, in addition to
disadvantage.
In addition to the obvious, in which the receipts come to me, I go to the bank in my own name.
Yeah.
In addition,
which I do also.
Well,
with the wake-up call.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
In addition to doing that, there is the satisfaction of knowing that you do a certain quality of work.
Yes.
The editor at G.P. Putnam said to me at a certain point when I was demanding certain things to be in the book and whatever, you know, he stopped at a certain point and looked up at me and he says, you know more about this than we do. Which I thought was a remarkable comment. And it certainly bolstered my confidence at the time I decided to get my...
Coming from an editor.
Well, sure. He was the editor. He was the editor. Harvey Ginsberg was the editor of The Choice originally when it was at G.P. Putnam's. And at a certain point, he looked up and said to me when I was saying, now, Harvey, here's what, and he says, well, you know, in truth, you know more about this than we do. Which was, I thought, a remarkable comment. Yes, yes, yes.
That's interesting that he would say that.
And one gets the satisfaction, like I do my column every week. I have the satisfaction of knowing that I'm saying what I want to say instead of somebody else saying it.
And nobody edits.
Well,
I mean,
well,
they don't tell you what to say.
Change. No. I suppose I could write for other folks, but we have understandings. That's why I'm independently syndicated, because
and that's the difference.
It has to be mine. It has to be mine. It doesn't make me as much money, but at least it's mine.
But you had that freedom.
And I sleep.
Because if you were,
I sleep well.
Well, yeah, that makes a difference too. Yeah. If you were working for someone.
And at the same time, see, I've been there. I can tell you this. While I was at Newsweek, and I worked for other papers. I worked for weekly newspapers, daily newspapers, weekly magazine, monthly magazine. I worked at Ebony. I worked at Newsweek. Yeah, I was an associate.
What's it like working at Ebony, someplace like that?
But the point I want to make here is that I understand the difference between having a place that is honest and courageous and willing to allow you to publish the truth and other places. Now, I have never, and all the time, and I have to say this, I have never worked at a place that was more direct and courageous in allowing me to find the truth than the Baltimore Afro-American. When I went there, that was my first job after I did the thing with Life magazine. This is to go to work for them. Yeah. Well, Carl Murphy. Carl Murphy was the publisher at that time, and in fact, if I've got time, I'll just tell you this. I'll tell you this. I was covering the Maryland legislature in Annapolis, out of Baltimore, and I went down to get on the bus, the BNA bus that goes from Baltimore to Annapolis. And but first, and I was a bachelor then, so I went in to the restaurant to get some breakfast before I went over to cover. And the guy told me I couldn't eat in there. So what do you mean? He said, you know, the whole thing, we don't serve colored people in here. This was 1956, and the Supreme Court had spoken in 54. He said we don't serve colored people in here. Without going through the whole rigmarole, let me just say that they wound up putting me out of the place, although I had bought my ticket and I rode the bus. Well, let me just say this. When I came back that afternoon from covering the legislature in Annapolis, I went into the editor of the city desk in Baltimore, and I said to the city editor, Miss Moss, she was Mrs. Phillips at that time, I said, Mrs. Phillips, I've got a problem. I said, the B&A bus terminal would allow me to ride the bus. I could buy a ticket, but they would not let me eat in the restaurant. And this is what was really great about it. And I've never seen any place that was quite as directly. She said, what do you want to do about it? It was that simple.
Just like that?
Just like that. She said, what do you want to do about it? I said, great. I said, tomorrow morning when I go, I want a photographer. She said, you got it. She called, she said, tell them, said, what else you want? I said, when I come back tomorrow evening, I want a Dun & Bradstreet report on the B&A bus terminal. She said, call the business department, tell them to get them in here. When I came back, so what did I do? The next morning, when I went to the B&A bus terminal, I went first and bought my ticket. I had my photographer out of sight taking pictures of me buying my ticket. I went over and went to the same stool and ordered breakfast. The guy says, look, didn't we put you out of here yesterday? Went to the same thing. He photographed the whole thing, okay? Then went around to the front, and as the guy put me out of the front door, he got the picture of the guy putting me out the front door and the marquee, the whole business. Now they discover what's going on. Hey, wait, don't do that. The time I got back from Annapolis covering of the legislature, when I came back, they had already, the B&A bus terminal people had already been to the publisher, Mr. Carl Murphy, saying, we want to take out ads if you won't run that story. He said, get out of here.
They didn't want to take out ads before.
Right, but get out of here. We ran the story, and I don't want to be selfish here, but I broke up segregation at that restaurant. Because what I discovered in that Dun & Bradstreet, what I discovered in the Dun & Bradstreet was the restaurant wasn't making money anyway. The B&A was making money on the black people, the maids and butlers who rode from Baltimore to Annapolis every day to do their chores. That's where the money was coming, but I could see that in the Dun & Bradstreet report.
Okay.
And I reported it that way. So
Well, they didn't want you to say
the
that.
black people, so the black people in Baltimore said, hey, we'll find another way. We won't ride the bus. And that broke it up. They said, okay, hey, you can eat in the restaurant. So my story broke that up.
Of course, I never knew that.
Of course, I understand
When was
that.
this?
This was 1956.
Oh, wow.
And I can tell you that that's when we broke up segregation at the B&A bus terminal in Baltimore, as well as on the bus. That broke it up. But that was the courage of a Carl Murphy who would say, hey,
And
we stood for something. Right.
Yeah.
Now, the papers for whom I write now, the Philadelphia Tribune, the Richmond Free Press, the Tennessee Tribune out of Nashville, and the Miami Times in Miami. These are papers who allow me to write without fear or favor, and hey, so for them,
For people who, Dr. Yet, would like to get in touch with you, I mean, for lectures or whatever, I mean, how can we do that?
Oh, sure. They can call me at 301-649-5123.
And where can we purchase the choice?
You can purchase the choice certainly at Pyramid, which you mentioned,
Okay.
at Dar es Salaam.
Caravan?
Walden's Books, Caravan, yes,
Okay.
yes. B. Dalton's down at Union
Okay.
Station.
You
Wherever.
still doing book signings?
I sure am.
Okay.
I do book signings. In fact, I did one recently at the Wheaton Plaza, Walden's Books. I did one recently there. And of course, I go to universities. There's one thing I wish I hadn't. In 1973, Morgan State did something nobody else has ever done.
What's that?
Out of the more than 100 universities that have used this book, Morgan State in 1973 bought 5,000 copies of this book
At once?
and distributed them that week for a week of reading to their students.
Wow.
And then on that Friday night, invited me to come over and lecture at the Carl Murphy Auditorium.
Really?
And that was one of the most sensational sessions I
What was
had
that like?
in all this. Well, can you imagine having hundreds of students who have read
The book already?
the book,
Yeah.
who have read it
Yeah.
and discussed it for a week and are ready for it.
And can ask intelligent questions?
Not only intelligent, but probing and incisive. Wonderful. This was perhaps the most gratifying session I've had out of, many appearances. But Morgan, right here in Maryland, Morgan State did that. Nobody else has ever.
I've never heard of a university buying, that many books.
Well,
like that.
I've not known of another doing it, but I'm sure
textbooks.
they have reading. Well, it was not written as a textbook. It is used as a text, but it was written as a trade book.
Oh, okay.
It was not written as a textbook. And now, that is a surprise. I really did not expect it to be that much used at universities. I really did not.
That's a great compliment, though.
Well, now, for example, at Tuskegee and there are several places where the teacher studied out of the book when they were in college and now use it as teachers. There's several places.
So they had them.
There's several places. At Ohio State, that is also true.
Because it's been out for 26 years.
26 years.
Yeah.
And so some of the people who now use it studied it in college and are now using it. Yes.
I first heard about it. A friend of mine at Howard had used your book at Howard, and
I know
she was telling me about
Taylor did. I know.
And she said her professor had used the book before.
Now, this particular edition, John Oliver Killens, my great and wonderful friend who has now departed, wrote the forward to
the original
edition just before this.
Okay.
But Barbara Reynolds does a terrific job
in the new edition.
In the new edition, she does a terrific job.
Doctor, it's so wonderful having you here to come and share with us. We got to have you back again, and we're looking for some great things still with the poster, as well as the choice and the pictorial.
Well, perhaps I'll stop by the bookstore here at Bowie and see if they'd like to have us to leave some books.
You need to do that. We thank you for coming and sharing with us, sir.
I was excited at the invitation. I'm delighted that we were able to
I've been trying to get you for a while.
I know, and I'm just delighted we were able to do it. And I tell you, I congratulate you again on the poetry. I wasn't talented enough to stay in poetry myself, but I try to do what I can in the way that I do journalism.
I thank you so very much. This is Color Me Poetry. I'm Danny Quinn. We've been talking with author Dr.